The lady in this story takes the idiom of cutting off one's nose to spite one's face to a whole nother level. Welcome, my mere mortalites, to another round of the Mere Mortals book reviews. My name is Kyron, and I do these book reviews for those who want to transcend beyond their own mere mortality, to get more juicy information, to learn more about the books that they may be reading, and get some insights from a different perspective. So today we've got a classic, and this is Medea and Other Plays by Euripides. So I am going to be pronouncing a lot of the Greek names wrong. Please take that into account whilst listening in. This is the 1966 translation by John Davey, with introductions and notes by Richard Rutherford. So this is the Penguin's Classics version. And this was written in between 438 to 416 BC. And I give those two dates in particular because there are 4 plays that were enacted in this of drama and mythology, originally performed as Athenian plays, as tragedies, I suppose you would say, in an actual arena with an auditorium with 5,000, 10,000 people watching. So the 4 plays themselves are Alcestis, Medea, the children of Heracles, also known as Hercules, and Hippolytus or Hippolytus. Not sure how that one is pronounced as well. This is approximately 200 pages, so it's not super thick, and each play itself is probably 30 to 40 pages because there's quite a few notes and etc. Things within this book. It's a play. So when you're reading this, you're reading about the actors, the chorus, the backdrops, the props somewhat. So even though it might seem like a story, and which it is, you do get things such as this person enters into this scene, or this trolley is maybe pulled across, or these actors are singing in this section as a group instead of one person just speaking. So it's a whole bunch of things wrapped in, and it gives you the idea of what it would have been like to actually have been in the Athenian audience watching this play itself. So in here, the stories themselves, they're related to the gods, heroes, servants, and they're relatively simple stories. So there's usually only 5 to 9 characters per se in each of these. There's usually a king of some sort. There's usually 1, maybe 2 gods who appear, servants who are also used as an idea for how the story progresses. And it's really focused on the inner lives, or like the moral decision making that each character has to make. And so it's not about sword fighting and shit like that, because no, these were mostly oral dramas. They didn't have too many props, they didn't have too many people within them, just based on auditorium size and how things were performed back in those days. So it's really focusing on the moral decision making, I guess you'd call it. Now, who was Euripides, and why is this important? So he was born in 480 and died in 406 BC, so he lived a nice 74 years of age. And he had approximately 90 plays written, or so the scholars believe, but there was only 18-ish that were fully translated and are complete, so that we know exactly what happened within the play. And these are 4 of them. He was amongst 2 others known as amazing playwrights, I suppose, in the Athenian times. So the other 2 were, forgive my pronunciation, Aeschylus and Sophocles, I believe. And he was somewhat radical, so he would take a different interpretation. He was pushing the boundaries a lot, and his plays, I believe, were what created the genre of comedy, whereas before they only used to have tragedy in these, and so most of the stories end on a rather sour note, or at least some sour things happen within them. He was a guy who pushed the boundaries, I would say. Now, let's get on to the first theme, and this was revenge, behavior that makes little sense. So I'll talk a little bit about 2 of the stories here, and so if you don't want to know what actually happens in them, I'd suggest skipping forward. And this is Medea in Medea, and Theseus in Hippolytus. So Medea is a lady who falls in love with Jason, and she betrays her family, her homeland. She travels with him, and eventually realizes like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting, because he marries the daughter of a king. He sort of puts her to the side, and he does this for various reasons. He wants, a better life for his children. He wants power himself. He wants a heritage. He wants to create a dynasty sort of thing. And she decides to take revenge on him. So that's one aspect. The other is Theseus, when he is he basically his wife, the queen. She falls in love with her stepson, so Theseus's son from another woman, and this is obviously a very moral, I'm not even going to say gray area, a black area. She probably shouldn't do that. And she has this internal internal dilemma to deal with. She eventually commits suicide to get out of this, and she blames the stepson because she wants to preserve her good name. And so Theseus decides to take revenge on his own son for what he believes is the death of his wife. And so there's these two actions where he takes revenge on his son, and Medea takes revenge on Jason. Now, how do they do this? Well, she does it by killing her own children, and also killing his father-in-law, Jason's father-in-law, the king, and his wife/wife-to-be. Theseus, he does this by cursing his son, and his son is exiled, driven away, and then killed by the gods because he used this curse on him. And so very self-destructive behavior is what comes out of this. Revenge seems to be really self-destructive. It's not purely self-destructive, as there is another person who is being enacted upon. So it's not as if it's like a loathing depression of I'm going to cut my own wrist sort of thing. Not that level of self-destructiveness, but it's pretty damn close. Killing your own children is right up there. And I guess the question is, what's their motive? Why are they doing these things? And so you would say it's to hurt/punish. So they're not doing this to make the world a better place. They're not doing this so it's an example for other people, and other people will learn, no, you shouldn't do these things because this will make the world a better place. No, it's always, it doesn't have the ultimate mindset goal of improving things. It's more a way of just getting rid of their own pain or distracting themselves, perhaps. So if you go deeper than that, why do they need to hurt/punish another person? It's because they got hurt. And so you could even go deeper than that and go, well, why did they get hurt? And it's because they got something wrong. They trusted the wrong person. Their perception of reality was different than what they expected it to be. And this is where I think revenge is rather silly. How is your wrong view of reality going to be solved by you hurting another person? It doesn't really make sense. I feel it should more be an internal thing. So you could ask, okay, how often is revenge self-destructive? And I would probably say almost all the time. That if you looked at these stories, obviously the two characters who had enacted the revenge hurt themselves immensely. One man had to kill his own son, and eventually realize, I made a wrong decision here. He was actually innocent. Medea had to kill her own children by her hands, like she physically slayed them herself. Pretty nasty stuff. You could also look at maybe other characters from I'm going to say mythology, which is Batman. What's his motivation? He seems to be a very dark, brooding character. Is it to help the world? Yes, slightly, but it's also because he wants revenge on the people who murdered his parents, or the person who murdered his parents. And so he goes into this world where there's not a lot of happiness and joy going on in there. It's a dark, brooding, hateful energy. And does it make the world better? I think that's up for debate, but there's definitely a lot of self-destructive behavior in the Batman world, because he has everything. Like if he could just let it go, he could have an amazing life, but there's something within him that almost wants the punishment in a way. You could even go into murdered family members. So let's just take like the Romeo and Juliet saga, or the Hatfield and McCoys. It's not like when a family member of yours is murdered and you murder one of the other families back. It's like, yep, wipe my hands clean. We're all done. We're all square. No, it escalates. It gets worse and worse. These feuds form. And so this revenge, it's very self-destructive because, yes, you killing them might make you feel better slightly, but it's going to rebound back at you twice as hard. And you could even think about this with like neighbor squabbles. So, this guy's tree is hanging over my fence and dropping leaves. So I'll poison the tree or throw things to make their dog sick. And you essentially create an enemy right in your own backyard, and you spend all the time thinking about how to get back at them and worrying about what they're going to do to you. So revenge to me seems a very silly behavior that doesn't make much sense. The other theme I wanted to jump onto was female courage. And so how did Greek women display this? And you might be thinking back in these days, courage was only for the men. They were the ones fighting in battle. They were the one with the muscles, the swords, facing demons and people from other lands, other armies, creatures from the underworld and things like that. But I really took out of this that the females were the courageous ones in these stories, and they were the ones who really stood out at me as almost being more ethical and moral than many of the men, even though the men were what you would maybe call heroes. And this was because if we look at a couple of examples, so even though Phaedra, the wife of the king who fell in love with her stepson, she didn't go with this. It's not like she just acted upon these feelings of hers. No, she tried to starve herself to death and eventually did kill herself so as not to hurt other people, to fall from grace in essence. She fought very valiantly against these desires which she didn't wish upon herself, I guess. If we look at the children of Heracles, the maiden, whose name I believe is Macaria, but it wasn't wasn't shown in this play, but I believe in other mythology it is. She sacrifices herself so that her other family members can survive against the tyrant, the herald who's bringing an army to them for the deeds that their father Heracles did, and for the king that wants revenge against Heracles. So he's going to try and murder their family, his family, I should say, Heracles' family. So she sacrifices herself so that her family can be safe and free. And then we have Alcestis, who takes the death of her husband and puts it upon herself in essence. So he was condemned to die, and he goes around whining to all of his family members, being like, oh, why can you save me, blah, 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 and no one wants to. And so she steps up. She volunteers to die in his place. And that is a immensely courageous action. It's like, wow, how amazing is that? So I think like the female courage aspect it's more of an acceptance, a surrender, a submission, I guess, if you want to pull it that way, rather than a resistance. So it's not like they're fighting physically with muscles and blood and sweat and tears. No, they're taking an action that is very scary still, and yet voluntarily accepting this burden that is placed upon them to create a better outcome for other people, I guess you could say. So yeah, it was quite interesting seeing that aspect, and my impression coming away from this was, the men in these stories I don't think really highlighted themselves as being the virtuous ones. At least it was at least an even playing field, if not slightly tipped more towards the women. So some observations and takeaways before we get onto the summary. What I liked about this was nothing was predetermined. So there seemed to be more humanness and more feelings and actions and decisions that needed to be made, rather than in the people in like the Iliad or Odyssey or the Aeneid. So, for example, there was no god backing the people saying like, you know what, Odysseus, like you're going to reach your country in the end. You just have to keep persevering. You know what, Aeneas, just keep going, man. You'll have some battles, some fights, but in the end, the Greeks are going to win. Like, you're going to do it. No, or like the Trojans are going to win. It's like, no. In these stories, they know what gods are there. They know they're manipulating things, but they still have to take the actions themselves that they think are best. They don't have that assurance that it's going to be all good, bro. Just keep going. No, they have to make decisions that they know will be permanent, and they don't know what the outcome will be, and they don't know if a god will swoop in at the last minute to save them or not. It's really, I think, a deeper look into the lives and decision makings that the Greeks would have to make in those times. I felt it was more realistic, which I quite enjoyed. It was also cool reading of the setup of the theater, and I feel like it almost transported me back into what it would have been like being a Greek senator or a Greek audience member, looking at this play and seeing how their mythology was being performed on stage. A travel back through time is kind of how I would describe it. And the only thing I would additionally add was this is one of those books where I would encourage reading the introductions and the notes afterwards. So don't get you can maybe read like the translator's introduction, which will give a bit of knowledge or ideas about how the translation is different and why they took certain actions and why these words were translated this way. Same with the editors as well. They have to make a decision of what parts would get cut or kept, and whether this flows with the original meaning, perhaps, of what the playwright, in this case Euripides, was trying to do. But I would leave that for the bulk of it till the end, because it can give you some additional highlights. So I learnt a couple of additional things, such as how the plays were performed or altered in different scenarios, and why Euripides might have taken this action to present Medea in this very conflicting light. She appears initially to have a very valid argument against her husband, who was leaving her after she did everything for him. But then you sort of start to see like, oh, okay, she's a little bit crazy as well, and at the end, she's not the good guy. She's definitely not the good guy. So, yeah, killing your own children is really chopping off your nose to spite your face, like I was saying at the introduction. So, in summary, I think it's a nice way to learn more about Greek mythology. The characters were way more relatable and definitely worthy, I guess, of the drama title. So if you think about what was actually happening in here, there was arrogant heralds, there was family infighting, there was near incest, there was patricide, there was I can't remember what it's called when you killed your own children, kindercide maybe, and displays of great sacrifice, of love, of anger, of hate, of revenge. Like, it had everything. So definitely worthy of being called dramas. And it's a unique format as well. I think it gives you an insight into the lives of how the Greeks and what they used to think about and how their entertainment would have been performed. So overall, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10, Medea and Other Plays. What could have been improved? I think it was just the format itself. It was a play. There was 4 of them. They were relatively short. It didn't give me enough time to really become invested in each individual story. But I do myself really like some Greek mythology, and so it was a nice addition to the Greek mythology I have read before. And so that is it for my mere mortalites. Thank you for joining me to this part of the video. What are your thoughts on Medea and Other Plays? Euripides, have you read any of these Greek works? Did you think that the characters were more human? What are your thoughts on revenge? Can revenge be in any way non-self-destructive? I'd love to know all of these things. Leave me a comment down below. If you can also do the other nice things, the bell, notification, subscribe. It would be great for this channel. And I really do hope you're having a fantastic Greek summary day, wherever you are in the world. Chiron out.